So guys, welcome to Conversations. I'm John Thomas. This is my friend Tony Kim. We actually just had a great conversation, a little bit about your story. So if you guys have not seen that one yet, make sure you go to our YouTube channel and find that conversation. You don't want to miss the encounter that he had and how that has shaped some things. But you'd mentioned a little bit about transformation as a core aspect of what God has called you to. And it just ties in with where I want to go with this conversation. So yesterday when I brought you here to the office, the Streams office, first time he's been to the Streams offices, we were walking around showing you different things. And I pulled out this Bible that we've got that John Paul used, and he kept notes in back from the 80s and the 90s. And just flipped open randomly to Ephesians chapter 1. And I've never actually seen it in there before, but I just looked down, and where it talks about the spirit of wisdom and revelation, John Paul had circled wisdom, put a little line off of it, and wrote apostle in the margin. Ephesians 1:17. And then where it says the spirit of revelation, he'd circled that with a little line that said prophet. And here's apostle and prophet in that aspect. And it just like, I mean, he's passed away, 5 years ago? It was 2015, almost, so not quite 5 years ago, but and he's still teaching. I'm learning so much. Like I thought I'd listened to so many of his messages, but I'm still learning. But that whole thing of the apostle and the prophet and how foundational that is. And the understanding of how the apostle and prophet work together, I think, is so misunderstood. So when I think about what the role of the prophetic is, I'll share that and I'll let you share a little bit about what the role of the apostle might be. When I think about the role of the prophetic, I think of someone that is kind of representing the aspect of Christ's work of the resurrection. And what I mean by that is the resurrection, you have the most hopeless situation that has ever been. God is dead. Like that, like just to say those words, I mean, it's insane what happened in that time. And in the midst of absolute despair, real life and the true hope comes and gets birthed out of the darkness. And so when I think about the role of the prophet, it's someone that can look past the tomb into the resurrection, that can look past what's going on and see what heaven is planning, no matter what things look like in this realm, that can see beyond what's happening in this realm into heaven's plan for it. That almost like the Jeremiah 29, because we quote Jeremiah 29:11 all the time. I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. But the context of that is Jeremiah is prophesying to the Israelites that they're going into this place of exile. Hey, you're going to go to Babylon. You're going to lose everything. It's going to look bad. And by the way, I know the plans that I have for you. You know, negative things are happening, but the negative things are not the end. It's not the whole story.
That's right.
There's something else that is coming, and being able to see beyond what's happening in the natural realm, what's happening in the demonic realm, into what's in the heart of God, and keep people anchored in the heart of God and keep people anchored in hope. You know, the Zechariah, was it 16:9 or 9:16? I always forget which one. It says, return to your strongholds, O you prisoners of hope.
That's right.
That we are prisoners of hope because we have a God that cannot be beaten.
That's right.
And the prophetic office, the role of the prophet, is to keep us anchored in that reality so that we hold on to hope no matter what's going on, and we keep an understanding of heaven's perspective in it. So what do you see as like the role of the apostle?
You should have just kept talking. That was so good. I don't know why you stopped. I should just flip this whole thing around and start interviewing you.
Hey, there you go.
No, that's so good. No, I think obviously when we talk about the fivefold, we're basing out of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11.
Right.
I love that revelation when you opened it up. It was just bizarre yesterday. It's just, you just said, look at this. I mean, and I pray Ephesians 1:17. I've been praying that for about 12, 13 years every day.
Wow.
That God, that you would give to me the spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of the epignosis, the experiential knowledge of God, right?
Yeah.
And so when you open it, I just thought, that is profound. That was a profound thing we read yesterday, right? That the wisdom being the apostolic, the apostle, and the spirit of revelation being the prophet. And so when it comes to apostles and apostleship, I just want to preface what I'm about to say with this. I think we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of, we're gaining more and more understanding. I think there's revelation that's being unfolded, when it comes to this whole role of the apostle. And it's not a title, it's a function.
Yes.
Right? And so, when it comes to this, again, we're still learning. But based upon some of the experiences, some of my mentors and things like that, we know this from just the very practical and historical sense of the word apostle. It's not a religious term, right? It is a really a military governmental term, right? Like Pilate had apostles, right? In fact, the ecclesia, Herod and Pilate, they had their ecclesia, and so Jesus said, I have my ecclesia.
Yeah.
That you are my apostles, speaking to his 12 and others beyond them. And so when it comes to that, let's define apostle first. An apostle, their role is when the Roman government were conquering territories, they would give all the resources to their apostle, who were really the captains of a fleet ship, who would take all their resources and building material and bring it into a territory that they conquered to build and teach people the Greek-Roman culture. Mm-hmm. So they would acculturate people from whatever culture they grew up in into the Greek-Roman mindset. Yeah. And they would build cities based upon Greek-Roman culture, right? And so
I heard somebody say one time that the point of it was so that if the Caesar ever visited this place that had been conquered in his name, that he would feel at
That's
home.
correct. That it would be home to him.
That
right.
That strikes me.
So think about that, right?
Yeah.
So what we want to do is make every place, every home, every neighborhood, every city, every nation a home for Christ.
Yes.
So that would, where it would become his dwelling place when he shows up. Here is my home.
Come on.
Right? And so the apostolic role is really about transformation.
Yeah.
It's about acculturating people into heaven's culture. Right? And so it's to help manifest literally we call it the Lord's Prayer, but, I like to call it the disciples' prayer, right? Because Jesus, it was a prayer for disciples, right? Let your kingdom come and your will be on earth as it is in heaven. And I think one of the primary assignments for the apostle is to establish heaven in cities and nations everywhere we go.
Yeah.
It's not just the apostle, but I think what's more important and really the focus should be is raising up an apostolic prophetic people.
Yes.
A culture for the church where we're not just so inwardly focused, but there's an external focus of bringing the kingdom, right? And so the apostle and prophet to me really has a vertical role of bringing heaven to earth. If you look at the other evangelist, pastor, and teacher, they're more horizontal in their function, right? Not that they don't get revelation, not that they're not bringing heaven to earth, because we're all called to bring heaven to earth, but their primary function as evangelists, pastors, and teachers is more horizontally based, where the function of the apostle and prophet is more vertically based. And so you said, the prophet is, their role is, we are prisoners of hope.
Yeah.
Right? And if we go from Ephesians chapter 1, the spirit of wisdom and revelation, we go into chapter 2, where, the apostle Paul says, I think it's chapter 2, verse 20, that the church is founded on apostles and prophets as Jesus being the chief cornerstone.
Yes.
Now, think about this. The kingdom, the eternal things of the kingdom in 1 Corinthians 13 is faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The foundation of the church is apostles and prophets, with the chief cornerstone being Jesus. Jesus being love, prophet bringing hope, and apostle bringing the element of faith, which is the eternal things of the kingdom. And that's why I believe you have those three expressed as the foundation of the church, right? And so The prophet says, yeah, your life sucks right now, but there's something better that's coming, right? It's that hope filled, it's the anchor of hope, it's the prisoners of hope, it's the abominable hope, it's hope against hope, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, as the prophet releases that hope perspective, which is really future, working with the apostle saying, you know what? Through faith, we could bring that into the now.
Yes.
Right. And so that element of that faith, working with hope, attached to love, Jesus, bringing the future into the now, of the kingdom now, and it's not just a kingdom coming, but it's the kingdom now, so in that dynamic, and if I could call it the triune function, and the manifestation of the foundation of the church being laid, apostles, prophets, and Jesus, and Jesus being the leader.
Yes.
Of love.
The greatest.
That's
love.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly.
That's so good.
And so,
well, and I love how just that concept of, even think back to the Ephesians 1:17, wisdom, apostolic, revelation, the prophetic. It's like the prophetic is pointing towards, here's the hope. Like here's what God is doing. This is where things are going. And we're going through this path. But then the apostle brings the wisdom, says, okay, if that's where we're going, this is how we get there.
Exactly.
And with you don't have those two combined, like there's always a mistake, because if you only have hope, but you don't have a strategy to get there, hope deferred makes the heart sick.
That's right.
If you only have strategy, but you don't have the hope to get where you're going, you work and you work and you work. And, you're always working, and it ends up in striving.
Yeah.
But when you bring those two together, there's this traction to release momentum into the church to build.
Right.
Because one of the other pieces that ties into this whole understanding of the advancing church, if you will, the apostle bringing and cultivating a place, is the Matthew 16. Here's the keys of the kingdom.
That's right.
And I love that, the gates of hell will not prevail against my church. Gates don't move.
That's right.
So it's the church that's advancing against the gates of hell.
Yeah.
So that momentum of those two working together, having hope, having strategy, having revelation, having wisdom, coming together, anchored in the reality of what Christ has done, and expressing the love of God, for God so loved the world that he gave, that comes together, and we advance against the gates of hell, and we watch the world transformed into the image of the one who came and released the seed of something to come that we are expressing through our lives.
Right. Yeah, no, that's so right on. And I think the strategic element, the spirit of wisdom, where the prophet says, this is what's coming. This is God's heart, right? And so it's this whole, foreseeing the future, right? And the prophets help us to relate to God, not based in the now, but based upon the future. Yeah. Because God doesn't relate to us in the now. He relates to us from the future, from the eternal place, right? And we see that throughout all of Scripture. Right? Gideon's sitting there crushing wheat.
Yeah. Almighty warrior. And he's turning around going, is there someone behind me? Are you talking to me?
Right. And he says, I'm from the tribe of Manasseh, which is the least of all the tribes. And I'm the youngest in the tribe of Manasseh. Right. And the angel of the Lord completely disregards what he says, doesn't even respond to him, because he's responding to him from the place of eternity that completed him.
Yes.
And so the prophets see in completion beyond the current challenges of the day, and sees a solution of what's already established from the place of eternity.
And let me put healthy prophets.
That's true. That's right. Not pathetic ministry, true prophetic ministry, right?
No, it's so good.
And so when it comes to apostleship, not apathetic ministry, right? But true apostleship, apostolic ministry, I think we need to learn to submit one to another, and we need to learn to work together in that sense. And the apostle says, here's what the prophet's saying. So let's build something, not for the now, but for Christ's heart for eternity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as we build together in that sense, I believe that it's wineskins we're building together, so that Jesus poured out, and the reality of true apostolic and prophetic ministry. I think if we go beyond the function, is to literally release the revelation of who Christ is.
Yes.
It's the Christ-like nature. It's again the face of Christ, the face of God.
Yeah, because that's the solution or the end game, if you will, of Ephesians 4:11. As you keep on going, the whole point is to reveal Christ.
That's right.
To reveal the fullness, the whole stature, every bit of him to the world, because the world is looking for their God. All of creation is looking for their God. They're looking and longing, groaning for the revealing, but the revealing happens in us and through us. And that brings the satisfaction that all of creation is longing for.
Yeah.
But it's got to be unto revealing Christ. It's not unto revealing us.
That's right. Yeah. And I love what you said there, because the goal of the fivefold, the apostolic and prophetic in this context, is not to focus on apostles and prophets.
Yeah.
It's actually to build up the body.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people don't like what I'm about to say here, but I'll say it anyways because I'm right. It's this. I think we call it the fivefold because the goal is for the five to fold. It's to raise up sons of God, not raise up apostles and prophets. And we need apostles and prophets today. But the end game, the apostles and the prophets, the fivefold, or what I like to call the ascension gifts, is the means to the end. It's not the end.
It's not.
And we need to understand that the function is to raise up the body into sonship of the Romans 8:19 that you just quoted.
Yeah.
That when we have the sons of God, on the earth in full identity, intimacy, we're not going to need apostles and prophets, really, because Jesus he didn't come as the apostle, although he was the apostle. He's the prophet, he's the evangelist, pastor, and teacher.
Yeah.
But he came as the son.
Yes.
And so I think our goal is not, the question is not how do we become a prophet or how do we become an apostle? The goal is, how do we become more like Christ?
Yes.
How do we, what does true sonship look like?
Yeah.
Because that is, one of the functions of the fivefold, right?
Yeah.
Is to bring them into maturity. Maturity into Jesus, the huios, right? The mature son.
Yeah. Because I love it. And going back to like Galatians chapter 4, verses 1 says a son, when he's not mature, is the same as a slave.
Yes, that's right.
But once he reaches maturity, then he comes into himself and he's acknowledged as a son.
Right.
And that, because the whole concept of adoption in the Roman world is very different than what we think of adoption. You would, if you had somebody that was working for you and they were doing a very good job, they were a great manager, and you saw this is the person that I could trust to take this enterprise, take it to the next place, you would adopt them.
Yeah.
And they would have the inheritance, they would have the authority to actually do that and to do it well. And so it was a place of maturity. You didn't adopt a baby as a baby. You adopted someone that you would recognize something in, and you wanted to bring them into the family so that they would have that identity in that place so that they could succeed you in what you were doing. And so somebody that would be high up in the government of Rome, they would adopt someone that they would then be raising up as their successor. And the whole point of adoption was to have a successor. It was not the same thing as what we can think of adoption as giving a home to someone that doesn't have a home.
Right.
Like that was a different thing. It wasn't considered adoption. That was caring for the orphans and the widows.
That's right.
That would be a very different thing.
That's right. And I think you said a key word is family.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the New Testament church, the New Testament expression of true prophets, apostles working together, again, Jesus being the chief cornerstone, we have to understand that the prophet's role and job description changes from the old covenant to the new covenant.
Yeah.
And it's to build family. Yeah. It's about inheritance. And so, Elijah's, job description changes from the old covenant to the new covenant.
Right.
He goes from being this power, supernatural signs and wonders prophet, destroying the prophets of Baal, holding up the truth, establishing, the laws of God, to now Malachi 4, 5, 6, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children and children to the fathers. And it is all about inheritance.
Yeah.
And inheritance only comes through family. And so I really believe that the apostle and prophet, as we're maturing the body, is really to raise up and establish a mature family in Christ. Because it's going back to the original intent.
Yeah.
Is to be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth through family.
Yes.
Right. And so, and I believe that, what a time to be alive.
I know. It's amazing.
For us to see God do what he's doing now and including us into that process, restoring back, the five functions, or the five functions to work together again to see the restoration of all things of Acts 3:21.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's think of, in apostles and prophets trying to work together,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that we need to grow into to allow that to be healthier? And I'll give you a perspective that I have, and I'd love to hear a perspective because I tend to run with or have interacted with a lot more prophetically oriented people.
Yeah.
You tend to interact with a lot more apostolically oriented, though there's interplay obviously in both.
Yeah.
But I can remember being in a meeting. It was an apostolic prophetic roundtable, mainly prophetic people, but there was a couple apostolic, and we were going through a bunch of things. But one of the private conversations, an internationally known prophetic voice, they were talking about, because somebody had made the comment about the need for apostles and prophets to work together, and there's like this side comment. Well, every time I try to, I get around an apostle, if I'm not doing what they want me to do, they don't have any use for me. They don't see the value of it. They just want me to do their thing. They're not actually in it for relationship.
Yeah.
Now I know that was a perspective, and that was a jaded perspective because of a very particular situation that had happened for this person. But one of the weaknesses of the apostolic is to tend to get caught up in what they're building and not see the value of other things that's not related to that vision.
Yeah.
How does somebody that's apostolic then bring in somebody that's prophetic that has a different value system maybe, or even a different strategy or a different goal than what they have, but still run together?
Yeah, that's true. I hear that a lot, and I have tons of prophets around me, from those who would be spiritual mothers and fathers to our peers. And one thing they say to me is they say, I love giving you prophetic words, Tony. And I said, why? And they said, because you do something with it. Yeah. I think one, again, we have to learn to submit one to another, and authority doesn't just come from top down, but it all comes bottom up. Yeah. And so it's about serving, right? And so I think it's not just, because I know a lot of prophets, they feel used. Right? It's, hey, you know what? How you doing? Oh, by the way, you have a word for me? There's something that I need a confirmation for, and I'm not casting dispersion, but it's just the reality. Yeah. I don't think we've learned to relate to one another in a right way yet in fullness. But I think one is this: we need to submit to one another and understand that the apostle is one of the five. It's not all five. Yeah. Right. I think that's the important thing. If apostle was all five, we don't need the other four. Right. And so I think that's number one. We need to come to that realization. Secondly, I think we need to understand that what we're building is unto something. And so what happens to me is my goal as the apostle is not just build my vision, but it's to I think the apostle's role is more of a facilitating role. And hearing the other, because just the grace give on the apostle's life, right? If we learn to stay in our lane, we're able to hear from the prophet and not just saying, this is my vision, that doesn't line up, so I'm just going to remove that. It's, what does the entire picture look like, including this, right? That we all see in part. Yeah. And so I'm seeing this, or the prophet's seeing this. Now, what does this look like when we bring it together? And so my wife is very prophetic. She's a prophet in our church. So I'll say, this is the direction I'm going. And she'll say, oh, but this is what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to be careful because she's my wife too, right? I'm not just relating to her as a prophet, right? And so I'm going, okay, God, give me wisdom, right? What I used to do was just be so visionary that I used to just almost disregard.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last few years, I've learned that when I include what she shares in terms of what she's seen, it becomes so dynamic, and it's an element. It's almost like, that life and grace gets imparted into the culture that's been established. And so when we receive the words and we actually embed it into the plan instead of disregarding it, we're actually receiving the prophetic grace into the culture of what you're building.
Yeah.
And so you're infusing that. And so those are some practical things, but I just think we have to answer, what does it mean to value prophets? Yeah. Not just a prophetic word, but prophets.
Yeah. I think as prophetic people, we have to learn how to get past the fear of rejection that's come from past experiences enough to be able to really submit ourselves to somebody else's vision. Because if I get involved and I'm with someone and I'm listening to them share strategy, share vision, I will get revelation that will fill in gaps, and I'll be able to see where it goes, and I'll be able to see problems. And in a lot of times, if I take the time, not just see the problem, but see the problem, and here's some things that you can do that'll avoid it. And I'll find myself, and I usually, when that happens, I usually don't tell people, well, here's the problem. Hey, have you ever thought about this? I give them the solution, don't even bother with the problem.
Yeah.
Because if I know if I give them this is the antidote to what's coming.
Exactly.
And so I give them the antidote, and then they don't have to worry about what's coming.
Yeah.
But being able to submit myself in relationship and submit the gift in relationship to that, it allows that way of revelation to come. And it doesn't mean that I have to make that vision the biggest thing in my life, because God's given me, and I'll use myself as an example, because we each have our own destiny. We have our own calling. Right. I have a destiny. I have a calling that God has given me. I'm moving streams forward into something. But at the same time, I'm relating to what you're doing. I'm relating to other people and what they're doing. And I need to submit that gift into those things to be able, how can we build? Like, what are we doing? The roar. Yeah. How can we move together? How does my gift fit into this? And how do I fit into this? Right. Not just relating as a gift, relating as a person.
That's right.
And once I relate as a person, that's when I bring the gift in.
Yeah.
I wait, usually.
No, exactly.
But that allows there to be that interaction.
Yeah, and I think a lot, and what we've done, and we're still again learning how all this works, just between, like, even our dynamic, right? I invited you into the process, right? This is what I'm seeing. Give me your insight, give me your foresight, give me, and not just inviting your gift into it, I'm inviting you, in our relationship, our trust, into that process. And I think, the apostolic leaders, I think we need to learn to invite prophets in, not just a prophetic gifting.
Yes.
In that. And I think a simple ask of, hey, this is what we're building. I would love for you to be a part of this process. And anything you feel, sense, see, you have open doors, 100%. I'd love for you to be part of the team to help build this, which is what I've done with you.
Right.
And with others, and so I think on a very practical level, invite them.
Yeah.
Don't just wait, but be intentional about the relationship, and develop real relationship, authenticity, not just functionality,
Yeah, because when I think about just even how we interact, I think of you first as a friend.
Yeah.
That's our main way that we connect is just as friends. And then we happen to be doing these other things, and that's great. but it's out of that foundation. And that is what allows it to be healthy.
Right.
That's what allows it, because I'm not being used. You're not being
Right.
used.
Exactly.
But we're together.
We're serving each other out of a place of love.
Yeah.
You know, it's beyond just this too. My family loves you.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what it is. It's building together as a family, knowing that if we're building family, everyone has something to contribute.
Yes. That is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tony, thank you.
Thanks for having me. This is a blast. Always.
Yeah, I think this is going to be so helpful for people just to hear this being talked through and figure it out. And yeah, appreciate you.
You too. Love you.
Yeah.